morning to all participants. I would like to welcome our eminent speaker, Dr. Santosh Kumar Viparthi. Sir is an assistant professor at Department of Computer Science and Engineering, MNIT Jaipur. I welcome you, sir.
Okay, madam. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Pooja Shivami.
Sir has completed his PhD from IIT BHU in System Engineering and MTech from IIT BHU as well, and Bachelor of Engineering from Andhra University. Sir, research area is image processing, pattern recognition, machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision. Sir has a rich teaching experience and published various national, international papers and have a good publications also. So we welcome you, sir, for this session in the short-term training program, which is ACTE approved on image processing and its application. So this is day 6, and today we are going to learn the moving object detection using deep learning. So I would like to welcome you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. As madam said, myself, Dr. Santosh Kumar Viparthi. Right now, I'm working as an assistant professor at Malawi National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. So right now, I'm leading my own lab of Vision Intelligence Lab. For any further research details, maybe you can visit here for more details. So today we're going to discuss about the concept of moving object detection and one new concept which we have started, that is called moving object recognition. It was a little extended version, and it will be little different from the literature. We're going to discuss some of the glimpse of those two concepts together. So moving object detection. So you know that what is the meaning of a moving object detection? Something which any of the object which is in moving. So we need to detect that. So there is a small difference between the object detection and a moving object detection. So object detection is nothing but whether in a particular frame, whether the particular object is a moving or static. It doesn't matter. If there is anything as an object, we need to detect. But in the case of moving object detection, there are a number of objects will be there. Those objects may move, may not move. That means it might be static. So we need to consider that static as a background. So how we can able to do that, and what are all the other challenges are there? So we'll go to discuss some of these things. Now, if you can able to observe from these two particular images, what you are able to see it from here, the leftmost side and the middle one and the rightmost side. So you can able to see it here in the leftmost side. This is also a moving object detection, and middle one is the moving object recognition, and the rightmost one is the moving object detection. But if you can able to observe, will you able to observe the differences between the outputs? The differences here is in the left side. If you can able to say observe, the moving objects are recognized with a bounding box. So if you can able to see it here, wherever the objects are moving, those objects are recognized with the help of a bounding box in a conventional view. In the second one, you can able to observe that we are going to do the same recognition from the aerial view with the help of again a bounding boxes. But in the right side, if you can able to observe, this is a basic traditional approach. If you can able to observe here, wherever the moving objects are moving, and those are pixel wise segmented. So the resultant response will be in a segmented response. So I hope you can able to see it, right? So how we can able to achieve these two, and which one will be better and which one will be challenging, and how to handle these two things is the we're going to discuss. And comes to this particular part, rightmost side will be the existing traditional approaches. Generally, the people will going to work on the literature. But in the leftmost side, whatever we have done, so we have proposed a new strategy to solve a similar problem in another easiest way. So what is the actual architecture of a moving object detection? Because the term itself is saying that moving, whenever something is moving, how you can able to recognize with respect to a time. So wherever the time series response is there only you can able to identify some object is moving. Because at a particular time frame called t, and there is a t plus 1, there will be a small change. With respect to time, nothing is changing. The response is still static. Is nothing but it's a background. So because background, the assumption is the background is not going to be moved. Of course, there are some limitations also there. We're going to discuss these things later on. The first one is there are 3 steps involved in the background foreground separation algorithm. The first one is a video sequence, and the major important step is to estimate the background. If you can able to see from the left side image, you can able to see here there are some people are there, but we need to estimate what the background is looks like from a sequence of frames. So you can able to consider that at a initially for the time of 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or initially for the 50 frames or 40 frames or 30 frames, we're going to estimate first background. So for the 30 frames, how the particular background will be looks like. Then we'll go into analyze. Then we'll go to analyze what is saliency estimation. So now with respect to this background, with respect to the estimated background, how my future frame or how my current frame are different. If the current frame is equal to the background, is nothing but current frame is also a background. But if there is a difference between the current frame and the background estimated background, that means we can able to detect some of the saliency information we can able to estimate. With the help of the saliency estimation, further we can able to calculate the foreground segmentation. So that's what you have seen, that this is a foreground segmentation. Wherever the foreground is there, that part will become white and rest of the information can be treated as a background, so that can become a black. So how we can able to solve this particular problem? So as I got the information from madam that you have already covered the convolutions and segmentation, encoder decoders and all. So I'll going to give you the brief glimpse of how the problem can be solved in different views and what are all the challenges, or where we can able to contribute something. So I hope this particular flow you are clear, right? So in these 3 things we need to remember. One is temporal sequence is important. Then estimating a background from this temporal sequence is important. Then estimating a saliency information is important. Then foreground segmentation is also important. So there are these sequence of steps we need to follow. So where these applications are, where this particular moving object detection can be used. So we have a lot of surveillance and the security based applications are there, and there are a lot of applications are there. But the challenging here is one algorithm of moving object detection, if we will develop, it doesn't mean that the particular algorithm will go into apply, or it can be useful for the other applications also. This statement is not valid every time. Reason is the background will change. It will not consistently maintain. The background will be vary, and the density of the objects may vary, and viewing angles may vary, and the way of data acquisition procedure may vary. So depending upon that, the algorithm, depending upon the situations, depending upon the applications, we have to design our own algorithms. So you can able to see it from some of these things like intelligent vigilance surveillance for intrusion detection. So if somebody is trying to cross your boundary, how you can able to detect that. And in these cases, here this is a simple example where you can able to see that the background is somewhat greenish. It's fine. So it will be very easy for us to estimate the background, how the background looks like. If any changes will be there, we can able to identify. But the question here is how we can able to define this boundary. If somebody is moving, crossing this boundary, how we can able to know. And there are 2 other challenges will be there. Crossing a boundary is not a big deal. Jumping a boundary is a big deal, because there is a gate. Through a gate, a person can comes inside or goes outside. Maybe it might be not an intrusion, but somebody is jumping, then only it will be an intrusion. So depending upon the problem, we need to make the necessary changes in the algorithm. The right one is traffic monitoring, because in the traffic monitoring, the objects are going to be moved. So how we can able to calculate? So there also we can able to use it. You can able to see some of the bounding box based detections we are going to show here. And another one is intrusion detection in night views and violence detection. So this is violence detection also having a lot of further scope. So Similarly, leakage detection. Nowadays, this is a common factor. Like in most of the industry, the leakage, there is some leakage, so we can able to detect this at every industrial sites. We can able to develop an algorithm so that we can able to detect these particular leakages, and the detection based on the tracking. So when the object is there, that particular object is a ball. So this ball is moving across, or what type of trajectory it is going to follow, or a person is moving from one place to another place. So we can able to identify his trajectory movement, so that further we can able to analyze for the behavior, how a player behaving. We can also estimate, we can also develop an algorithm there also, but the basic fundamental concept is out there. We have to use it for the moving object detection. Another one is like, this is the anomaly detection. So anomaly detection, if you can able to observe here, again I said anomaly, so that means it's something which is not normal, that is called abnormal. So how you can able to define the difference between the normal and abnormal? Because the anomaly is a simple thing, yes, but in this case, whenever you are defining or whenever you are thinking about a particular application, the definition will change. Because for example, if you can consider here in the first one here, the car is parking. If it is a parking in a non-parking area, then it is a anomalous behavior. But in the same direction, if he is parking in a parking area, then it is not anomalous behavior. From an image itself, how you can able to define this is anomalous or not? So this is a problem. So this, depending upon our problem, we need to estimate. And similarly, you can able to define the anomaly on the highways also. Recently, NVIDIA has developed one database in CVPR 2019, and it was extended in 2020 also. There they have developed their own data set for highway monitoring. There also they have defined they have given the predefined definitions of the anomaly. In the highway, the particular vehicle is stopping. That was an anomalous. But now the question here, the challenging questions here is, in a highway, the particular vehicle is stopping because of the red light, because of the signal, then it is not anomalous. So how you can able to differentiate these two? So like this, wherever the object is moving, whether the object is static, and also we have to develop this particular moving object detection as a pre-processing step. Further, we can able to extend as per our requirements. So another very important need nowadays is forensic analysis. So nowadays we are going to use the applications for the most of the forensic applications of most of the things we are going to use as a post forensic analysis only. Whenever the situation has happened, we are not doing anything. Once the situation is over, then we are analyzing what's happened. So if you can able to design any of the algorithm with a combination of the moving object detection and some, depending upon your problem, some another anomalous classification, detection and all, behavior profiling and all, then we can able to develop a robust algorithm. So forensic analysis also having a good scope. So border security and crowd monitoring. Nowadays crowd monitoring is also a very important aspect. You can able to see that the crowd, when this particular crowd can come. Now this is also another problem. Now in the COVID situations, the monitoring of a crowd is also a very challenging task. Once upon a time we should be all together, but now the definition has changed. We should maintain a social distance. Now the definition of crowd, the people are gathering together, it doesn't mean that there was some anomalous. No. Depending upon the event, depending upon the situation, the people may gather together to form a crowd. So what type of actions they are trying to do, and based on the situations we have to define we have to take a definition, then we have to use the crowd monitoring applications. There also this is having wide scope here. Another one is the marine surveillance. So there also we can able to use the particular concept of moving object detection. And another one is you can able to see the pedestrian detection and tracking. So there also, who are the pedestrians? First of all, we need to detect the object, then we have to estimate in which direction they are moving. So we can able to track also. And there is another important area is person re-identification. So person re-identification means suppose the person is moving and you have recognized, and after some time he is not moving. So as per your algorithm is saying that this guy is not moving, so it is become a background. That is also true. But your application is in such a way that even though the person is moving or whether he is not moving, you have to recognize, and at the same time he will be not appear for some time instant of t plus k times. Again he will going to appear after some time, still you have to recognize him. For example, here you have entered into the premises. You will be there on the premises for 2 minutes. Later on, for 1 minute, you are not at all visible in front of the camera. On the fourth minute, again you came in front of the camera in the premises of in the surveillance area. Then your algorithm has to re-identify you. So that means it has to memorize the properties of an object, properties of a person, and whatever it has already recognized earlier, it has to memorize up to some extent. So this is the person re-identification. It will also have very wide variety of applications are there, further applications. So this is another interesting area where the more challenges are there. We're going to discuss the challenges with some of the examples, real-time examples, with some results also. We'll see. Another one is search and rescue operations. So whenever some mischievous things will happen, then we can able to use the drones, UAVs. So nowadays it is very cheaper. So drone surveillance is one of the easiest way to monitor the terrain information, right? So now, whenever the disasters are happening, whenever some disaster, some emergency situations are happening, wherever the people may not able to go, the human may not able to enter easily, there we can able to send the unmanned aerial vehicles. That is called drones. Now, whenever you're going to send in drones, what are all the other challenges? One thing is we can able to monitor. Here the challenges here itself, the challenges are the drone itself is moving. Because whenever you are trying to do a moving object detector, what are the object detector, a moving object detector, through a aerial surveillance with the help of UAVs, if you'll observe, the UAV itself is moving, right? Whenever it is moving, it will create a feel in such a way that the objects also moving in the ground. So how you can able to handle this problem? This is another challenging part. And second challenging part is from an aerial view, if you can able to observe, the object size will be very small. So how we can able to handle it? We'll show you some of the examples. So disaster response is one of the another important aspect area where this MOD or MOR can help us. So MOD means moving object detection and MOR means moving object recognition. We'll discuss few concepts slowly. So as I said, what are the challenges in the conventional view? Conventional view means normal scenarios. For example, our surveillance cameras, which is available at our all premises. So the challenges will be different weather conditions. So weather conditions will going to play a major role in detection of the identifying or recognition of a moving objects. Because suppose we're going to see about the rain. In front, whenever there is rain, in front of the camera, there will be water droplets will be there. So this is going to create, it will create like a noise. And at the same time, fog will also create like a noise. So you have to handle such situations. Another one is background changes and the camera jitter. So background may not be similar. The background will keep on changing. So how we can able to develop an algorithm to estimate that the background has changed? Because I already told you, initially 50 frames or 30 frames you are going to consider. For example, if you consider that 24 frames per second. Per second, if you're running 24 frames and you are trying to take a 50 frames as a chunk. In that 50 frames, that means 2 seconds of data you are trying to consider together and you are estimating a background. So once you are estimating a background, with the assumption that at a third second or 2 seconds plus some fraction of seconds, there is not a sudden change in the background we are estimating, but there may be a chance also, right? So these are all the another challenges. And camera jitters, the camera may be vibrated because of XYZ reasons. It will be another challenging problem. Illumination changes, this is another problem. So foreground motion speed, suppose the foreground objects are moving very slowly and it is moving very fast. Now it will be difficult for an algorithm to detect robustly. That means if you have a developed an algorithm with an assumption of the vehicles are moving at a moderate speed, then all of a sudden if a vehicle have moved on very faster, or either the vehicle is moving very slower, so the very slower vehicle will be treated as a background and the faster vehicle also treated as a background, because it is not capturing in the particular frame because of the variable speeds. So like this we have a lot of challenges at the. So in the literature, most of the challenges have addressed, and some of the things we will discuss. For example, dynamic background. How whenever we have a dynamic background, what is the definition of dynamic background? For example, you are standing in front of the fountain. Maybe there is a building in front of the building. There is a fountain. You are standing in front of the fountain. Now, from our side, if you can able to analyze that, you are the object, not the fountain, not even a building. But as the fountain is, is functional, it will going to create a illusion in such a way that there is something which is moving, because with respect to time there are some changes we can able to see it. But technically speaking, that fountain is not a foreground, it was a background. It was creating an illusion. For example, there is a tree, the tree is shaking because of the wind, due to the wind. So but actually the tree is a static object, but the leaves are moving because of this wind. Now how you can able to make it, how you can able to develop an algorithm in such a way that even though this is a moving, but it is not a moving object, it is a static object, it belongs to the background. So these are all the challenges are there. To address this challenge, we'll discuss one problem. So these are all some of the challenges I have already told you. The background changes, illumination changes, shadow information. Because whenever you're going to think from the shadow, because if you're going to treat this as a two objects, but technically speaking, it is not a two object, it is belongs to a single object. But this is a shadow belongs to a particular person. How you can able to do it? Another one is occlusion. While you are detecting any of the algorithm, there may be some occlusion. In this example, there is a tree, there may be car, there can be anything, depending upon the viewing conditions. And another one is blurredness. It can be blurred because of the motion. The camera itself may be moving faster, or because of the wind, because of any exogenous reasons, there may be a blur. How you can able to handle it? As I already told you, weather conditions and camera jitter. So weather conditions I already told you. So now the camera jitter. Camera jitter means the camera itself is shaking. Then how we can able to handle it? So night vision, nighttime conditions, and thermal views. Then the size of the foreground. So foreground there will be a car and there will be a truck. The sizes are different. So now how you can able to define an algorithm for size variations? How you can able to handle it? And another thing is frame rate. As I already told you, frame rate. How fast or how slow we are going to define a frame rate based on that algorithm are dependent. Now this is all from the conventional view. But if you're going to consider the same problems in an aerial view, because in recent times the researchers are showing their interest towards aerial views because of some of these challenges. Because traditional approaches or moving approaches were already available. Yes. Any question? Okay. If any questions, please let me know. Yeah. So the challenge here in the real-time application is the traditional approaches. In the traditional approaches, what are the algorithm you have developed? Those approaches may not able to satisfy from the aerial views because of few reasons. The few reasons here is intra and interclass variations and insufficient annotated data. What is this insufficient annotated data? We will discuss more on this. Real-time challenges and the location motion clues and variable object density, small and larger object shapes, sporadic camera motions, and change in aerial views. We'll see this thing through visually. Now you can able to see it here. If you can able to see it from the left, from the top first row, first column information, if you can able to see it here, in the night view, how we can able to detect an object which I have shown here with the boarding box. This is a challenging part. Right side, you can able to see it here. Earlier we have seen the bigger size images, but now we have very smaller in size because of the aerial view, and there will be some occlusions also. You can able to see the trees here, which you can able to see on the bounding boxes, and which is in the green color box. And here in the bottom, if you can observe here, some of the vehicles are very clear because it's white color. Some of the vehicles are almost, it is not even clear because of the viewing conditions and because of the whatever the color of a car it might be, and the shape and size and color. So now how we can able to handle such situations, and another important aspect is different background conditions. So if you can able to consider here the left side in the snow, it is a trees, and here the green trees. So color is also different, and here you can able to see the density of the objects. So in the rightmost second row last column, if you can able to observe here, we have n number of objects here. So there are dense number of objects are there. In few samples, if you in few images, you can able to see there are only one object or two objects. So now how you can able to define variable sizes will be there, variable number of objects will be there, different challenging conditions are there. And of course, we are going to handle this with the bounding boxes. Why? And one point was insufficient annotated data. What is meant by insufficient annotated data? Here the insufficient annotated data is, here what are the bounding boxes there. Whenever you're trying to train any of the model, first of all, we need to say which particular portion is we are having an object, or which particular objects are moving. We need to define. So this is the bounding box based annotation. But in the traditional approaches, if you can able to go for the moving object detection, we have a ground truth on segmented response. So we have a ground truth wherever the changes are there, they have the black and white foreground and background segmented response are there as a ground truth. So whenever you're going to develop any of the algorithm, some of the challenges will be there. Not only applying simply on any particular application, so data balancing and creating a proper annotations, creating a ground truths, and all are going to play a major important role. So how to handle these things, we will see some of the problems. So as I told you, traditional approaches like moving object detection, in general, we are going to use some of the feature extractions and then background modeling and foreground detection. If you can able to observe here. So with the help of I hope you can able to see the diagram here. I think it is visible. Here I have a collection of some frames are there at a time series data, a collection of frames. You can able to see it here. Now from this time frame, we are going to extract the features first. We are going to extract features. The features can be color, edge, spatial, or temporal features, depending upon whatever the application you are going to consider it. With the help of those features, we are going to estimate a background model. So background is how a background will looks like. As I already told you, take the initial n number of frames. With the help of n number of frames, you can calculate some background. For example, you can able to calculate a median. So whenever you're going to take a median, mostly you're going to generate a general representation of how a background will looks like. Then you can able to generate a foreground detection, the segmented response. So comes to the feature extraction, as I already told you, there are a number of features extractors are there in the literature. Color-based feature extractor, edge-based, spatial-based, temporal-based, and hybrid features. Hybrid features means it's a combination of color and texture, and parametric and non-parametric. There are different feature extractors are there in the traditional approaches. So for the background modeling also, background initialization and background maintenance. So we need to initialize the background, then we have to maintain the background. That means first you have to initialize something as a background. Then you have to update with respect to time. Where the time goes on, you have to update the background with the help of the past history frames. It means that initially I have 1 to 50 frames as you have considered as a background chunk, and from that 1 to 50 frames you have estimated one background. Now when times goes on, you have moved to the 51st frame. 51st frame you have analyzed that yes, the particular 51st frame is a background or a foreground. Now the 51st frame is over. Now whenever you are moving to the 52nd frame, with respect to 52nd frame, the previous frames are again a background. Now previous frames are past frames. Now as you have decided that the background is going to be estimated with the 50 frames only, out of the 1 to 50, now 51 frame is also there. Now you have to insert this 51 frame in the previous 1 to 50 frames. The reason here is you have to maintain a chunk of these 50 frames, and every time you have to estimate the background. You have to update we have to update the background itself with respect to time. Therefore, it can able to recognize the wherever the moving objects are moving, it can able to properly recognize. So for that, we need to go for the background maintenance strategies also. Of course, There are some limitations are there in the existing literatures also. We're going to discuss some other things and how to overcome. We will give an example. Even for the background modeling, there are different approaches are there. Parametric statistical and non-parametric, cluster, neural based, fuzzy based, and so on. So if you will go for the traditional approaches literature, there are a number of different approaches are already available in the literature. So foreground can be again done with the two things. One is a classification, the other one is thresholding. So classification is a pixel-wise binary classification. We can do that with the help of regression. And another one is a thresholding. You can consider that something which is more than some. You have to take some condition. If that condition is satisfying, then you can consider as a foreground or you can consider as a background. And comes to the latest literature from 2017, 2018 onwards, the researchers got attracted towards applying the deep learning models on some of the traditional deep learning models on the moving object detection. So if you can able to observe this, this is just one particular paper, survey paper we have submitted. It is after process. If you can able to observe here, there are a number of approaches were there in the literature. But however, if you can able to analyze the inputs, there are the way we are feeding the inputs are going to be varied. Few people have sending this sequence of frames. The T frames they are going to pass it as an input because we need to estimate the temporal sequence variations to estimate the backgrounds with respect to deep learning models, and some subset of sequence of frames they are going to pass it on every time. Or only current frame they used to pass it on, or a single frame used to pass it on. So what you are going to pass to a network, based on that the result and response are going to be vary. And of course there are different approaches are also there in the deep learning models. Before passing to the encoder decoder network, they are going to pass the capsule networks, attention model, LSTM, and there are a number of approaches are there. And at the output, they are going to calculate the outputs with respect to simple 3D CNN models or skip connections, residual connections, or GAN based, and there are a number of approaches are already available in the literature. Few we will going to discuss here. And in the literature, there are some top-rated data sets which are publicly available. There are many. A few we have noted down here. CDNet 2014, LASIA, UCSD, SBI 2015, and so on. There are some of the Fisher for knowledge. There are some popular popular moving object data sets which are already available. And these are some of the details of the frames and all. Of course, you can able to get this all information in our papers also. And this is the way we are going to calculate the precision and the recall, because we are going to take the decision based on the pixel-wise decision we are going to take segmentation, right? So we can able to calculate the precision and recall. For example, you can able to understand that suppose we have a ground truth that is called actual data, that is called actual label, and you are predicting. Your model is going to predict something. Let's assume your ground truth is saying that yes, this is the positive, and your label also saying whatever it detected as a positive. That means both are saying positive, so it is a true positive. Both are saying the same things, that the answer is true, so it is a true positive. Similarly, the actual label, that is ground truth, is saying that what particular location is not it is a background, but your predicted model it is saying that it is a foreground. It is predicting as a foreground, but actually it is a background. Then it is a false positive. In other case, your predicted model is saying it is a background, but actually that location is a foreground as per the ground truth. Then it is falsely saying it is a background, so it is a false negative. For example, predicted model is saying this is a background, and ground truth also saying it is a background. So both are saying it is a negative part only, so it is a true negative. So based on this, we have some of the measure that is called precision, recall, then some specificity, and so on. So what was the advantage of the precision? It is going to calculate the percentage of positive predictions that are correct. True positive upon true positive plus false positive. and we can able to calculate the accuracy also. So accuracy is the percent of prediction that are correct, and recall or a sensitivity you can consider. Then it will going to say that is a true positive upon true positive is false negative. So it can say that the percentage of positive cases that were predicted as positive, and specificity, right? The percentage of negative cases that were predicted as a negative. So now the question here is like, with the help of these particular parameters, we can able to estimate how accurately our algorithm is going to be detected. Now in this the F score is very well defined, and very most of the researchers are going to be use this parameter F score. So we need to focus on the F score. How much is our false score is. So this is on pixel-based segmentation process. If suppose if you're going to do the same thing with the help of bounding box, as I already told you, the problem can be solved in two different ways. One is a pixel-based segmentation. Another one is bounding box detection. Bounding box detection. Now, if it is a bounding box detection, then we have to go for the intersection over union concept. There we have to worry about the mean average precision and so on. So the logic also is so simple that whenever you have a ground truth of a bounding box, and whenever your algorithm is going to be predicted this is a bounding box, so what was the intersection between these two regions? Based on that, we are going to calculating or estimating the recognition accuracy. So in this particular procedure, we're going to discuss about the first paper which has published in pattern recognition, International Conference on Pattern Recognition. This is one of the top rated conference in our field, in the field of computer vision. So ICPR is in 2018. The paper was Candid, Robust Change Dynamics and Deterministic Update Policy for Dynamic Background Subtraction. So the main objective, in a simple way, I will say, the main objective of this particular approach is to develop an algorithm which can able to handle the dynamic background conditions. So wherever the dynamic changes are there, how we can able to handle it. Because as I told you, there is a fountain, but fountain is not a background. That is not a foreground. It is a background. So how we can able to handle those conditions? So in order to handle those things, one model we have proposed that is called Candid. So just briefly, I will give you. I think who are studying on this. In the traditional approaches, there is a popular technique called vibe. You might be heard about the concept of vibe. And these proposals, these Candid, whatever thing we have proposed, it is inspired from the concepts of vibe as well as a substance. So just I'll give you a brief idea of what the vibe and what the substance is and what are the differences. So generally, a vibe. In the vibe, actually, are you able to follow me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So are you able to follow me, or am I going little?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. It is.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. So now, here, yeah. Now, in the traditional approaches, the concepts are like, we can extract the features, we can use the color feature, texture features, and so on. And without extracting the features also, we can able to solve it. So there are some approaches over there. So we're going to discuss about a few concepts. In the vibe, they have proposed that actually in the concept of vibe is like, they have developed three update strategies they have developed. The first updated strategy is random sampling replacement memory, random sampling replacement, and memoryless update policy, and spatial diffusion via background sampling propagation. But in the substance, they have taken the help of features. So the pixel level spatial features descriptor, the LBSP. They have developed a concept of LBSP. This is the extended version of local binary pattern. You might be heard about the concept of local binary pattern. They have used the concept of spatial features. Also, they have used the concept of color, and they have utilized the concept of adaptive feedback information. So they have taken these three models together in the substance. So they have taken the LBSP, that is called local features they have extracted, then the color feature they have applied, then they have used the some new update strategy they have developed. Similarly, in the literature, there is a new one concept was there, that is called random update policy. As I already told you, suppose the 50 frames were there. Now you have estimating the 51st frame. 51st frame is become a background or a foreground. So with the help of 50 frames, you are developing a one background, and you are taking the relations between the background estimated from the 50 frames and the current frame called 51st frame. You are trying to take the difference between these two. If the difference is modulatorily same, that means the 51st frame is also become a background. If suppose the difference is more than some threshold, then you can treat it as that particular 51st frame as a foreground, right? Now 51st frame, you have already taken a decision. It was either it is a background, it is a foreground. Whenever you are moving to the 52nd frame, now which particular 50 frames you will again considering as a background is a challenging question. Because the 51st frame, suppose it's a background, then already you have a 1 to 50 frames. Out of this 1 to 50 frames, which particular frame you need to replace with the current frame is a challenging question. So in the literature, they have used the concept of random sampling update policy. So randomly you can update any of the frame in the 1 to 50. There is a one interpretation also there. While you are going to do the random update policy, there was some advantage as well as some disadvantages. The advantage here is it will going to give you the equal importance to all the background samples. Therefore, the relevant and irrelevant samples have equal probability to update. So whenever you are going to update this random way, there is a chance of some information which is really background, it will going to be get affected, or even if it is a foreground, it will going to be affected. But the question here is, whenever you are going to develop something as a background, you are not confident enough that whether the 51st frame needs to be considered as a background or a foreground. So in order to overcome these particular, confusions and difficulties, we have developed the proposed concept of candid. So I'll give you the advantage of this candid in a few ways. For example, the candid with respect to the vibe and substance, this is a traditional approaches. Initial parameters are not a manual, because in the previous vibe and substance, the parameters are initially we have to define. So if you are going to define some of the parameters here, you are limiting to something. So in order to overcome in the candid, we have defined the adapt to parameter strategy. It is going to be initialized from video sequence to video sequence. We don't need to be consider any of the particular sequence. Then background model updation strategy is deterministic. It is not a non-deterministic. So whenever you are going to update, you have to follow some strategy. Therefore, you will aware what particular strategy you are applying instead of randomization. How sensitive your particular problem is towards the updation, because if your algorithm is very sensitive, then it is very difficult, because like fountain is very sensitive. So your algorithm should be non-sensitive to the dynamic background changes. How dynamically you can able to update? Dynamically we can able to update in the proposed algorithm. Now, in this particular proposal, did we have used any of the texture features and color features? No, definitely not. To speed up the procedure, we have not used any of the texture features or color features. So these are all the differences with respect to the existing literature. But now you see, okay, neither I have used any of the color features, neither I have used any of the texture features. I'm not using any of the manual parameters. We are going to use a adapt to initial parameters, and we are going to use a deterministic update policy. How we can able to do all the things? In order to do that, just we're going to see this particular thing, like initial, this is the input frames. You can able to see it here, because we have to analyze something that the traditional approaches, the inclusions and the information in the traditional approaches, which leads us to develop a robust descriptor or robust network in the deep learning. Because there is a small difference in the deep learning approaches and the traditional approaches. The concept, the resultant concept might be same, but in the deep learning approaches, some of the rules which have violated in the literature, we're going to discuss those particular parts in detail. So that this particular traditional approach processing is very much important. Now let's see, this is a input frames. So we have a number of maybe 50 frames you can able to consider. With the help of these 50 frames, we have initially considered the change dynamics. So how we can able to do the change dynamics? Simply you can take the 50 frames and you can take a mean. Then mean temporal gradient information. Now in the change dynamics, what we are trying to do, mean temporal gradient means you have taken 50 frames. Out of 50 frames, you can take the median out of it or mean out of it. You're going to get some response. In the change dynamics, what are the 50 frames are there? First you short it out. Depending upon the pixel relation, just you short it out. Then you divide this particular part into two parts. Then we have to take the differences between the background you have estimated versus the 50 frames. So you're going to get the 50 different responses. For all the 50 responses, you take a mean. That is called change dynamics. So you have already taken a median from the overall information, as well as you are trying to take the relations between the current frame versus the previous frames, and you are going to generate the outputs. So in order to do that, we are going to use the dynamic update rate and the dynamic thresholding. We are going to use it. The purpose of dynamic thresholding is here we are trying to take a decision. Like whenever you are going to consider some of the pixel which is crossing any of the threshold limit, you can consider as a foreground. Otherwise, you can able to ignore. You can consider as a background. So similarly, recent history model, as I told you, recent history model, which particular pixel needs to be replaced or which particular frame needs to be replaced out of the recent history model. In the recent history model, we have taken the 5 frames in this example. Out of 5, which particular portion needs to be replaced? It is not a randomized. So in order to do that, we have given specifically one approach to solve the particular problem. So the more details you can able to get it from this particular paper of Candid. So once you will get the foreground detection, you can able to post processing for getting the segmentation. But in this entire approach, if you're going to observe, we haven't taken any of the features out of it. Simply you have taken the image sequence of frames. From there, we are trying to calculate the background. From the background model, we are trying to take the relation between the background responses. Then you are taking a decision whether it is having a change or not. So current frame versus the background model, what we have generated, you are trying to take the relations. So based on this, you are going to take a decision whether the particular pixel belongs to foreground or background. So this is what the data set here, we can able to see it here, and you can able to see the output here. This is the input frame where in front of the building there are some fountains were there, and this is how the change dynamics will going to do it. The rest of the information will going to be removed, and it will going to observe wherever the changes were there. But actually these changes we are not considering as a foreground. And you can able to observe here there is a car is moving, right? Car is moving. So you can in the change dynamics the car information is also there, but the fountain information is there. So it is the first level of filtering the process. And the second row, first column is a ground truth, and the second row, second column, last response is the result what we have got from the proposed algorithm. But of course there is a small noise is also there. Again, there is a small noise is also appearing in the result. And this particular thing we have developed with the help of the change rate 2014 dataset, but we have not applied this particular algorithm on all the sequences whatever it is available. Some of the selected videos only we have implemented, and we got some of the results. For the more details, you can verify this particular paper. You'll get to know what these particular parameters are going to imply. Now, as I already told you, inspired from the concept of Candid, as I already told you, sorry, inspired the concept of substance. There we have used the concept of feature extractor. They have used some of the feature extractors with the help of colors also. As I told you, pixel level spatial feature descriptor, LBST. So spatial feature descriptor they have developed, and they have used the concept of color, then they have developed. So in this example, we have not taken any of the color, but similarly we have applied one of the feature descriptor that is called antic. So this paper also got published in this particular journal. You can able to verify this for more details. Just I'm giving a brief overview here, and the more details you can able to see it from the paper. So antithetic isomeric cluster pattern for image retrieval and change detection. So what this particular ANTIC is trying to do? The ANTIC here, in this ANTIC, if you can observe here, from a particular neighborhood operation, we are going to extract the directional as well as the corner information only, because each and every pixel is important for us. But now this simple feature extractor will not going to help us. And if you can able to observe here from this particular direction, maybe you can consider here, there are two different colors we have represented a particular direction. So we are going to we are thinking that the upper portion and the lower portion have some similar properties. In order to prove that similar properties, because we have a 360 degree direction will be there. If you can able to analyze the problem for the half of the information, the rest of the half will be replicated. That is what the basic assumption. To make it true, we have developed this particular concept called ANTIC. So the manner of representation also you can able to see it here. ANTIC, the procedure is so simple. Then the advantage also you can able to see it here from the, as compared to the traditional approaches. And let's assume the first one is the original. First one is the original data. From this data, there are some existing approaches. You can able to see it here. The existing approaches are not properly defined to extract the dedicated directional information. But the proposed algorithm like ANTIC, while you are applying on the 0 degree direction, you are going to get the vertical lines. Similarly, you are applying for the 45 degrees, you are going to get the 135 degree lines, and so on. So this is going to solve the, it is going to satisfy the basic principle of the execution along the directional information as well as the corner information as well. So you can able to preserve, you can able to identify the corner information also from here. So now with the help of this particular problem, we have proposed a new concept that is called inter-ANTIC. So there is an inter and intra-ANTIC features we have developed. So initially for the local spatial operation, we're going to get the 8-bit representation, because we have 8 bits, so that it can be in the range from 0 to 255. But in this particular inter and ANTIC, we have generated 16 bits. So how we have generated? The response will be, you are trying to take the differences between the relations between the two frames. That one is the background and another is the current frame. How you can able to generate? You are trying to take the relations between the 8 neighbors with respect to the center pixel of the background, or you are trying to take the pixels among the corresponding pixel positions. So based on this, we can able to generate the inter and intra-ANTIC. So inter means in between the two different frames, intra means within the frame. Now with the help of this intra and inter-ANTIC, we can able to easily identify what this particular, which particular pixel we will consider as a foreground. So in the shadow we will consider as a background. The shadow will be considered as a background. As I told you that the shadow is another problem, another challenging problem. How you can able to develop an algorithm to avoid this particular shadow problem? In order to avoid this, we have used this particular inter and intra-ANTIC. If you can able to see that this is the, let's assume this is the background information. So at this particular location, if you're going to consider this particular inter and intra-ANTIC together, then you're going to get the 16 pixels, right? So 8 pixels of the inter and 8 pixels of the intra, so you got 16 pixels. Now let's assume the same grid you have taken for the shadow, you're going to generate the 16 pixels. Now you try to take the Hamming distance between these two. If you're going to take the Hamming distance between these two, the Hamming distance is 2 only. So this is a very small number. But whenever you're trying to take it in this particular location, like a foreground, wherever the changes are more, if you can able to observe here, this is how this particular, at this particular location, you can able to get this type of representation. Now if you're going to take the Hamming distance between the background, as I have already discussed, the distance is more. So we have considered this particular threshold in this example, wherever the Hamming distance is more than 3, you can consider as a foreground. In this example, for the more details, you can able to verify the paper also. So with this, we can able to also consider that which particular pixels are going to be affected because of the shadow regions, and which particular pixels are going to be affected because of the fountain regions, and so on. So these are all the some of the challenges are there with us in the traditional approaches. Which particular approach needs to be followed and how it needs to be followed. These are all the challenges. So in order to overcome these dependencies, in order to overcome these challenges, we have the problems in the deep learning. We have some new solutions in the deep learning. So these are some of the results. We can You can verify the results. This is also results from CDNet 2014 dataset. Of course, we have CDNet 2012 dataset is also there. Initially, 2012 they have given the 8 different set of videos categories. Later on, they have extended to 13. So they have added some 5 categories more. I think 7 categories more they have added in 2014. So CDNet 2014 is a little popular. So here also we have solved almost 12 categories. Some of the challenging categories are failed, so we have addressed that details as well. So you can see these results from the paper. Now, as I told you, deep learning approaches. So in our, what are the problems we have discussed? Which particular model I needs to be developed? Whether I have to go for the textual features, whether I have to go for the color features, whether I have to go for which particular dynamic update policy I need to go, whether I have to go for the random initialization, whether I have to go for the deterministic initialization. So these are all the challenges for there, and these are all the n number of problems also there in the traditional approaches. But as you already know the importance of the deep learning, so with the help of this deep learning, we can able to design or develop a new robust descriptor which can able to learn the things by themselves. So with this, in the literature, some of the articles were there, few things we will discuss, and there are some major differences over there in the literature, which those differences we have addressed, and we got some paper and things from IEEE signal processing letters. We will discuss that. Now, the data division was a very important strategy in the deep learning, because in the traditional approach, that problem was not there, because whenever you are going to pass any of the videos, this thing you should be very clear about it. So this is how the basic differences will come. In the traditional approaches, you are going to estimate the responses on a video sequence, because you have a sequence of 1000 frames, but initially you are going to start at a initial 50 frames. So initial 50 frames only you are going to initialize. Later on, it will going to repeat the process till the 1000 frame. You are not going to divide the data. You don't need to train separately and all. Right? There is no dependency at all. But whenever the deep learning comes, it requires some ground truths. It requires some dedicated ground truths. So they have divided the data into 2 parts. One is the dependent scene dependent evaluation and scene independent evaluation. Okay, scene independent evaluation which we have proposed, and scene dependent evaluation which is already existing available. So what is the difference between scene dependent evaluation? Scene dependent evaluation, you can able to see the name itself. The existing works has evaluated the model on scene dependent evaluation setup, which makes it difficult to assess the generalization capabilities of the model in complete unseen videos. So what is this? What is the meaning of generalization capabilities? We will see. So of course it leads to a inflated results, because you can able to observe this particular diagram. You observe this diagram. This is very much important for understanding. Scene independent data division. Just you observe here. Scene independent data division. That means there is no dependent on the background scenes. Let's assume this is one set. The first one is one type of background and the information. Second one is different background information. Third one is different background information. But in the testing strategy, if you'll observe, I'm completely testing on unseen data. I have trained the model on different backgrounds, but I'm testing on something completely unseen data. That means there is no dependency at all. So whenever you are going to test with unseen data and you are expecting a good results, that means you are trying to imposing some, you are expecting some generalization capability from your network. So what is meant by scene dependent evaluation? Scene dependent evaluation means, let's assume this is some of the data which is have trained, and of course you are testing on the similar background data. So during the training, the system know how the background will looks like. In the testing also system knows. So as the system is already aware what type of background which is already trained, so which may leads to the good performance, which may leads to the better recognition accuracy, right? But in the first case is more challenging as compared to the second case, right? So we will see some of the differences with the actual comparisons. We will see some of the things. So we'll discuss about this particular paper, one of the author from India itself. So they got this paper in SMC. This is also a good conference. This is published in 2008. I mean, 2 years back. So that time this moving object, the deep learning which is applied on the moving object detection is very early stage. So in this particular paper, the main contributions are so simple. One is temporal histogram based approach is proposed to single channel of videos, and salient features are edge-related information they have extracted. Then multi-scale encoder decoder they have used. Then they further have tested on the qualitative results on the CD data. This is a simple approach. So initially they have done the temporal histogram based approach. So that here the term is called temporal histogram based approach. So what is meant by temporal histogram? They have taken the initial. I'll show you the diagram. So this approach is divided into 3 steps. One is the background estimation using temporal histogram based, and salience map generated, and foreground segmentation. There are 3 steps they have followed. The first one is temporal histogram. Second one is salience map generation, pixel-wise differences. The third one is foreground segmentation. So segmentation algorithm they have followed. So you can able to see the diagram. So initially this is the time sequence is there. Time frame sequence. You can able to observe this is a time frame sequence. From this time frame sequence, they have developed a background. It's a manual input they have generated. They have calculated the background. Now this particular background, they have pass it to the CNN model, so that if here they can able to estimate the saliency map. So how you can they can able to estimate the saliency map? Simply they can able to take the relation between the pixel-wise relation, the current frame versus the previous frame. So once the saliency maps are over, then they have passed it to a small encoder decoder network. So they have used a 2-layer encoder and 2-layer decoder. Right? Now, once they have passed this, now you can able to observe here they have done the estimation on 2 different things, because they want to estimate on the multi-scale responses. If the object size is bigger and smaller, how it will going to behave. To solve this particular problem, they have done the two-stream network. One is for the bigger size, another one is for the smaller size. That is the half of the size. And they repeated the same procedure. At the last, they have concatenated together to estimate the background. This is one of the simple approach. What is the limitation here? The limitation here is they have taken the manual input. It was not an end-to-end solution. There are some traditional approach involvement was there to estimate the background. So this is what the limitation of this. So here you can able to see that the temporal median, this is advantage. At this particular location, if you're going to take the sequence of 50 frames, they can able to get this particular background, right? Similarly for the right side also. So if you can able to see it, how the training can be done. This is a simple theory portion how you can develop, but how a training can be done. If you want to do the training, then you have to develop the data into 2 parts, right? Initial the background estimation step, the entire video sequence is divided into number of small video clips. Further, the temporal histogram is obtained from each pixel at the location m, n. Do you understand? What are the big video sequence were there? They have divided the sequence into small video clips. They have divided into the clips. From there, they have estimated this background. So this particular background estimation was a manual. Then they have done the salience map. Then they have developed. So in order to develop this foreground segmentation, as I told you, they have used this encoder decoder concept. Then they have implemented what are the encoder they have used, the same decoder they have also have to use to solve the particular problem. But now, as I told you, the training strategy you can observe here. From this is what we are saying, that scene dependency and scene independency. So if you can able to see it here, they have a total number of sequence, or they have divided into 18,000 frames. Out of this 18,000 frames, they have used the 12,873 for the training and remaining for the validation. Clear? So they have taken the validation accuracy. Because it was the initial approach, so it was a limitation of this particular approach. There are some results were there because dependency was there and validation accuracy was there, so they got the good accuracy, that is for 90%. Even they have mentioned this thing in the limitations also in the paper. For more details, you can able to verify this paper. Comes to this another thing, this IEEE transaction and intelligent transportation system, which is published in 2008. This is also in early stage, it was also a new thing. So this was the first paper which is given a solution for the first end-to-end solution for the moving object detection. how they have developed the end-to-end solution. They have, instead of developing a background estimation with the temporal mean, they have utilized or inspired from the one approach which is available in the literature. With the help of that, they have developed a motion saliency map. They have developed one optical flow concept. Similar to optical flow, they have developed one network for the motion saliency so that they can able to estimate the wherever the motions were there, they can able to recognize. Further, that sequence they have considered for the rest of the problem. I'll show you this particular diagram. Let's see. Now, if you can able to observe here, this is the motion saliency net. In the motion saliency net, they have trying to estimate the, suppose they have input frames are there, 50 frames or they have taken the 50 frames, then they are generating the 50 frames only. Before they are passing to the foreground detector, that is called FGNet foreground extraction network. Before passing to the foreground extraction network, they are going to estimate the motion saliency information. That means wherever the changes were there, they are going to highlighting those changes with the help of two things. One is a background estimator and the saliency estimation network. As I already told you, right? Initially, you try to do the background saliency, then you calculate you have to estimate the sum of the saliency estimation. That means wherever the changes were there, try to observe initially. So this is a procedure which is inspired from the optical flow. In the optical flow also, what we're going to do? We're going to analyze and detect wherever the motions were there, we are going to observe. Similar strategy with the help of deep learning they have done. So if you can able to observe this particular thing, they have used the concept of temporal pooling, because we can't able to reduce the dimensionality of the half in the image itself. So instead of 50 frames, you can able to do the pooling operation temporally, so that the temporal depth will going to reduce, so that you have to repeat the task in such a way that you will going to left out with a single temporal pooling depth. So that means the diagram which you can able to see it here, this is the estimated background. So they initially with the help of this temporal pooling sequence, they have estimated a background. Once they have estimated a background, they have replicated this background to 50 times. You can able to observe here, because as I already told you that we need to calculate the saliency map, because from the 50 frames you have to estimate the background. How to estimate the background? With the help of the temporal pooling. You try to take the 50 frames, then you apply the temporal pooling operation, then you're going to get some 8 responses. Again you apply the temporal max pooling of 8, so you're going to get a single response of a same size of 256 cross 256. You can able to observe here. Now you repeat the same task for the 50 times. Then you try to take the pixel-wise differences between the original frames, as I already told you. So how you can able to take it? Simply they have concatenated these temporal sequences onto the original frames. 50 original frames were there, and the 50 backgrounds were there. They have passed these two together to the difference layer. So in this difference layer, they are trying to take the differences between the pixels. And once you have taken the differences between the pixels, you will going to get the 50 saliency responses. Guys, are you able to follow me what I am saying here? For your understanding, I will repeat you one thing. You observe here, this is their first paper in SMC conference paper. As per the author's knowledge, initially 50 frames were there. With the help of 50 frames, they have taken the background estimation they have done. That is simply temporal mean. With the help of this 50 frames, they have taken a mean out of this 50. They got the similar size of a single image. Now they have treated as a background. Now this background information they have passed it on to the network in such a way that they are going to take the differences of this background with respect to the 50 frames, so that they can able to get the saliency estimation. So wherever the changes are there you can able to estimate the changes, right? So in order to do this manual process into automation, complete solution with the help of deep learning, they have proposed one new concept. This is called this particular part, MSCNet. So this is a motion saliency network they have proposed. So now they got, instead of 50 frames, they got the 50 saliency responses. They got it. Now this 50 saliency response, now they have forwarded, move it to the foreground extractor. So in the foreground extractor, what they have trying to do? They are trying to learn the features with the help of temporal median as well as the spatial pooling operations. But if you can able to observe here, they are trying to maintain the depth. They are trying to maintain the depth of the sequence because they are trying to analyze for the 50 frames. They are throughout the problem they are maintaining the 50 frames only. So but the scale of the features, the scale of the image is reducing because of the spatial pooling. To estimate the background, they have used the temporal pooling, but here they are going to use the spatial pooling. So what are the pooling operators we have discussed in the earlier classes? The same concept they have used till 64 plus 64 plus 50. Then they have do the decoder. They have done the encoder. Then they have completed the decoder network with the same strategy. So with the help of this, they have estimated the proper background as well as the foreground. Now, if you can able to see it here, they clearly mentioned in the article that the global training set they have 653 small video sequences are there. So out of it, they have 32,000 frames were there from the CDNet as well as the last year's data. So they have combined two particular data sets, and they have tested the dependent as well as the cross data evaluation also. So cross data training also they have done. So that means they have tested the models on the three particular data sets. One is on the CDNet data set, last year data sets, and the PTIS data set. So they have mixed these data sets of CDNet as well as the last year together and divided the training and testing strategy, and they have also tested on the cross data set evaluation also. So these are some of the results you can able to see here. And as the term I have used again, they have divided the data. That means that whatever the background that was there in the training, the similar background is also available on the testing also. So this is somewhat like person dependent, scene dependent. So the scenes are somewhat similar. So this is how you can able to see the results which are published in the IEEE transaction. And some of the cross data set also there. You can go through all the details. So this is the first paper which they have proposed one complete end-to-end solution in 2018. So as I told you, of course there are some limitations will be there always. As I told you, like there are different challenging conditions, thermal conditions and underwater they have not tested. There is a scope for analyzing the problem on that, and still they have not compared something on Davis dataset 16, 17 and so on. So now Davis is also a little attracting the researchers to work because of the more challenges in the dataset. Now, what are the things which we have discussed till now? This is on the literature. What are the limitations were there? Of course, there are some strategies were there, end-to-end solutions were there, or fusion of traditional as well as the deep learning solutions are there together in the deep learning. But however, if you can able to analyze, the major drawback which was there in the traditional approaches and the deep learning approaches were dependency. So in the literature, most of the researchers have followed the dependency. That means they were dependent upon the background. But this is the first paper which is trying to address the challenges and the problems which are happening in the literature, and this paper got accepted in IEEE signal processing letters. Now this is a network is completely end-to-end, and the training was completely done on the scene independent evaluations only. That means there is no dependency in the training and testing. Even the background dependency was not there. So in real-time perspective, we need to design such type of algorithms only. So of course it was very challenging to solve the problem, but however we have solved this particular problem. And you can able to observe this. This is a particular network which we have proposed. One is a avalanche feature. You can able to see here. So here we have taken the 50 frames, and the 50 frames we have developed one single background, right? So here also we have done the temporal depth pooling operation we have used here with the stride levels of 5 and 2 and 1. Temporal depth of 5, 2 and 1. Initially you have done the 5 level, then you have done the 2 level, then you have done the 1 level. So we have done the we have estimated the background, then we have done the conflict block. So conflict is, it is also contemporary feature block we have extracted from the current frame. Similarly, you have feeded a manual temporal medium. It was also a limitation of this particular paper. A manual temporal medium we have given for easy learning the procedure, so that we have estimated the background, of course, through the deep learning, and we are also passing some extra information as a how a particular background will looks like. To do that, we have done the median operation also, and we have concatenated these three responses together to the encoder and then forwarded to the decoder to estimate the particular response. So the network architecture you can able to see it here, and if you can able to see it here, we have used the multi-scale responses here. It is not something like a filter which we have used as uniform filter. No, we have used it here as a multi-scale filters. So that is the 1x1, 3x3, and 5x5 we have used. So wherever we are going to use this multi-scale filters, it is going to extract the various edge information. So therefore, it can able to learn. The system can able to learn various challenges. Wherever the challenges will be there, automatically we can able to learn. So these are all the intuitions which are generated from the traditional approaches only. So once we're going to pass this information to the encoder and decoder, we can able to estimate the foreground. And as I already told you, this is a way of dividing the data. So we have clearly given the division strategies also, but in the literature you will not going to see that the data division strategies. Nobody will going to mention in detail because of the various challenges. But in this paper, we have clearly given the what type of data division strategies we have applied in this particular paper. So it is a base paper for our moving object detection. And you can able to see this proper data division information also, which is present in the paper. Maybe you can able to refer that. So in order to prove the robustness, we have done this particular approach on the change in a data set only. It's a pixel-based segmentation, as I already told you, in the help of scene independent evaluation strategy. And this is how the results will be. So now the question here is, I hope you are understood about this, the difference. This is a 3D network we have followed, and existing one is 2D network. So we have proposed a 3D solutions with considering in mind that we have to develop an algorithm for the scene independent evaluation. Now in order to extend the work, because here as I told you, these are pixel-based segmentation you have to do. To estimate the foreground, you have to do the pixel-based segmentation. Suppose the CDNet dataset, actually if you analyze this CDNet dataset, is not meant for the deep learning purpose. It is popular for the traditional approaches. But however, the researchers, they have utilized this particular CDNet dataset for the foreground segmentation to show their effectiveness. But in the real-time challenges, to generate this ground truth is a very big challenging problem, because you have to do the pixel to pixel wise segmentation. You have to do where the foreground is there, where the background is there. So it is a very tedious task. It's very difficult for a user to create a background, so that create a ground truth. So in order to overcome these challenges, we have proposed one new problem with the inspiration from the object detector. So in the literature, there is a concept called object detectors, YOLO, RetinaNet, and so on. We inspired the concept from the object detector, then we have imposed that similar concept on the moving object detector. So the moving object recognition with the help of bounding box was not there in the literature. So we have proposed this particular concept. You can able to verify this particular problem. So what is the meaning of MOR? As I already told you last time, a small difference was there as compared to the literature and ours. The moving object recognition is wherever the objects are moving, you have to detect, and for the only those detect objects you have to recognize. Not for all the objects. What are the basic object detector will do? The basic object detector will go on to detect all the objects, whether it's a moving or static. That is what this YOLO, RetinaNet, SSD will going to do. But it's not like that, because our objective is to develop a similar algorithm for the moving object detector with the help of bounding boxes, so that we can able to imply this on the various data sets, so that we can able to create a labels easily with the help of the bounding boxes rather than the pixel-based segmentation. So we can able to save the time. But how we can able to use this? Because you have to make somewhere, you have to develop a strategy where it has to feel, yes, this is only the moving object, it is not a static object. And you have to take a decision that only you have to take a bounding box for the moving object, not for the static object. This is a very interesting problem which we have addressed in this particular paper. So this is the difference between the object detector, moving object detector, and the moving object recognition. Also, object detector means wherever the objects are there, this is the object detector. Moving object detection means I already told you this is a pixel-based segmentation, foreground and background estimation. And the moving object recognition means you have to recognize the objects. You have to recognize the objects which are moving. So this is the difference between the terminology. So MOR, which we have introduced. So for this, we have created the own annotations. As I already told you that CDNet 2014 dataset is for the which is the publicly available ground truths for pixel-based segmentations. As I already told you. So we have re-annotated the data with the help of bounding boxes. So the bounding box annotation is very easier, so that we can able to compare what are the approach we have proposed, whether it is reaching the accurate results or not. To do that, we have tested the model on the CDNet 2014 dataset only, but we have created our own access aligned bounding box labels we have created. So these are all the description of the data set what we have used and how we have divided the data, and you can able to see this all the things in the paper. And this is the paper which is accepted in WSEB. It's a Korea conference in our field, top conference. And this is the network, you can able to see it here. So this is the latest 50 frames, as I already told you. The data set remains same, but the way of solving the approaches are a little different. So this is a recent history frame. So from there we are going to use the TDR, temporal depth reductionistic block. That means temporal depth reductionistic block means the 50 frames here, the depth is 50. Now we need to apply some strategy in such a way that it can able to reduce to a single frame, so that it can able to we can able to estimate a background from this particular temporal reductionistic block. So we are reducing the model from 50 frames to single frame. Then we are taking the help of temporal median, and we are going to pass the current frame, so that you can able to estimate where the changes are. Right? Yeah, I forgot one thing, that if you want to know the more details about what is the importance of the current frames and temporal median frames and so on, you can refer this paper. So we have done the complete ablation study with effects of passing a temporal median or without passing a temporal median and so on. The detailed description we have already given. So because of the time limitations, I am going to cover a little faster. So temporal median, now you have to concatenate these all three together, then you pass it to the backbone model. So in the backbone model, what we are going to do, we are going to estimate the two features. One is the backbone features. So what is meant by backbone features? The backbone features are nothing but wherever the changes are there, those features we need to pass it to those features we need to estimate, because here we are passing to three parts. One is the estimated background, one temporal median, and current frame. So with the help of the current frame, we have to estimate where the changes are there. Then we are taking the concept of multi-layer feature pyramid. This is from the RetinaNet. The multi-level feature pyramid means you are going to estimate the multi-scale information, because how a properties will going to vary from scale to scale. If the scale is varying, how the properties are going to be varying. There may be object can be smaller size, bigger size, and moderate size. So how you can able to handle these things? So in order to handle it, we have used the concept of multi-level feature pyramid. Based on the responses for each scale, we have concatenated all the responses, and we have used the regression model and for the estimating the pixel level segmentation, like pixel level intersection of union. I told you that IOU, right? The same thing we need to use it here also. So this is the temporal depth reductionistic block. So the 32 depth will be going to reduce to 1 depth. Then we are going to calculate the feature map, then so on. So these are all the responses you can able to see here. We are not going to worry about the pixel segmentation right now. This is based on the bounding boxes. So how we can able to generate, because this bounding box information we need to generate based on the what are all the labels we have generated in the training procedure. Based on that only this particular bounding box will going to be generated, depending upon the size. This is one type of heat map generation to visualize what's happening in between the 32 layers, because initially I have taken the 32 layers, then I have reduced to the single layer. But if you can able to see what's happening inside, in order to see the changes which are happening inside, we can see the things with the heat map generation. We can generate a heat map. Through heat map, we can able to observe the things. So these are all the some of the results which we have published. This is a mean average precision and intersection of union, as we have already discussed. These two you can able to see it from here. As I told you, ablation study, you can able to see the ablation study of different frame sizes and which part needs to be removed, which part needs to be added. All the things you can able to verify from this particular paper. So this is how it will want to look like. You observe here, only the moving objects are going to be recognized. If the car is going to be stopped, it is not going to recognize. You observe here. Initially, this particular car is going to be recognized. Later on, the car has stopped, so the recognition has stopped. So here, my objective here is to recognize only the moving objects, not the static. And here also, you can able to see there are a number of objects are there in the car in the background, but all those objects are not detected. Only the moving objects are going to be detected. So we have inspired the concepts of both object detector and the moving object detector, and we have developed this particular new problem. Now this is the conventional views, which is traditional. But comes to this is the aerial view. You can do the same moving object recognition from the aerial view also. But here the challenges are too much because the data set is not at all available. So in this particular paper, we have this paper was accepted in ACCCC, this is the ESTER conference. So in this particular paper, if you will observe, we have created a new data set. Of course, which are that particular data set we are planning to open for the public based on the request. I'll show you that. This is how the differences will be there. So conventional view, this is how the earlier problem we have defined. That is on WCV. If you can able to see it here, the bounding box information, right? Here you see the bounding box are very big there. But if you see from the aerial view, again the challenges will come. The dense of the objects and the size of the objects and so on. How you can able to develop? So as the data sets are not available, we have designed our own data set. So we have developed two different data sets. One is the object detector for the only for the object detector from the aerial view, and moving object detector from the aerial view. Both the data sets are available. First one is the ABD data set, airborne data set, and this data set for the object detectors. Of course, this paper also got published. You can verify that. That is geosense letters. And see here we have initially focusing on the 4 objects. Of course, we are planning to extend. These are all some sample data sets you can able to observe here. This is very tiny objects as compared to the traditional view, very smaller in size. So you need to recognize and see the backgrounds. We have a very dynamic background. We have the backgrounds are very challenging. So how you can able to handle that? So in order to overcome, this is the MOR, UAV based MOR, moving object recognition through an aerial view. So for that, we have developed one database, as I already told you. So we have collected the data sets, images from the publicly available sources with the permissions, proper permissions. Then we have annotated the moving objects with the bounding boxes. Then we have trained the model. So this is one trained model, as I told you. This is also the concept inspired from the previous concept, but not exactly. Same retina net, current frame, temporal sequences, everything was same. Heat map generation, and this is the data division strategies. How the data can be divided and tested. You can verify this particular paper if you require. Any doubt? I have covered a little faster and new. If anybody have any doubt, please.
I request all participants, if they have any doubt, please ask to sir.
If you guys have any doubt, you can discuss. And if anybody interested towards solving this particular problems, like what are the things we have proposed, the new challenging area, that is moving object recognition through aerial views with the help of bounding boxes and all. If you need any information, you can visit my website. Of course, either you can visit my MNIT website, or you can visit my personal website also. This is my lab website. Maybe you can get the information properly there. If any other information, please let me know.
If we have our own custom data set, then how to start with the object detection? Like suppose I have some images and I want to recognize
you want to go for the object detector, or you want to go for the moving object detector?
So, is first for just for object detector.
Aerial view or normal view?
It's a normal view.
Very good. So if it is a normal view, if you want to go for the object detector, there are popular techniques for there. That is YOLO, a faster RCNN, YOLO V1, V2 up to V5, and RetinaNet and SSD. These are all the popular techniques which are already available in the literature. Of course, the codes are also available. So first, what you need to do is like first, if you need to get the annotated data. Suppose you have your own data. First, you have to get the annotations. So in order to do the annotations, there is a software. You refer my articles. The software details also we have given, but we have not explained in detail about the software because it is a very known software. You can able to verify that. With the help of that software, just you can able to create the annotations. First, you create the annotations and treat it as a ground truth. Now you pass an image either to the YOLO or either to the RetinaNet or SSD. The difference here is YOLO and the basic YOLO concept was infrared. YOLO and RetinaNet were from the same group only. But the difference is here they are able to handle the multi-scale variations. That means smaller objects and bigger objects they are trying to solve. So there are n number of variations are there in the object detector. If you can able to analyze those all the things, different scales they would like to handle it. That is a reason in the RetinaNet there is a pyramidal structure over there. In the pyramidal structure we are going to take the multi-scale. So what you have to do is you take a data set, create the annotations first. Once the annotations were over, annotation is bounding box, height, width, and center pixel. So if you're going to take the software, you're going to give you the four information that you're going to give, or 5 information. 4 corner information, one is the center of the object. So you'll get the 5 information, you store it. Now you pass the image to it, so that whenever you're going to pass an image in the YOLO and RetinaNet, the features are going to be reduced to smaller patch. And from the smaller patch, it is going to calculate with the help of this precision, with the help of this regression problem, it will going to calculate whether the object is available in that particular bounding box or not. That is called objectiveness ratio. So they are going to calculate the objectiveness ratio. So for that you have to go for the YOLO. You try for the YOLO. If you understood, then go for the RetinaNet. RetinaNet is very easy to understand.
Thank you, sir.
Still, if you guys have any problem, for example, you have done, let's assume traditional process you have already done. Now, if you want to make the changes, because if you simply use it, there is no, significance. There is no significant change, right? People will simply say that it is already available. If you want to make the necessary changes, then you refer my article. Then you will get to know where we need to get the changes. The information the information where we need to change, we have already given in the article.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir. Now, if any participants have any query, they can ask to sir. Okay. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Santosh Kumar Viparthi, sir, for the wonderful session, and it was really very informative for opening the new dimensions in which the researcher can work in moving object detection, its applications, its research opportunities. And thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation for this expert talk.
Sure, madam. Thank you very much. If anybody have any doubt, maybe you can contact me or drop an email. Okay.